Welcome. We're very happy to be here today to talk with you about how we can create a culture of welcome and diversity while also serving the information needs of newcomers during COVID-19. In particular, we're looking forward to hearing your own ideas about what you are currently doing and what you would like to do in your own communities around this topic. I'm Natalia Taylor-Bowdoin, Library Collection Coordinator and Associate Professor at the University of South Carolina, Aiken. I became involved with Welcoming Augusta last year as I was investigating groups in the central Savannah River area interested in supporting immigrant and refugees. This grew out of my growing interest over the course of the last 6 years in the information needs of resettled refugees and research I've done in that area, particularly with refugees from the Central African Republic. When I found out about the National Welcoming Week, it seemed like a great program to be involved with, particularly given current challenges faced by immigrants today. I have also been involved with the American Library Association's Services to Refugees, Immigrants, and Displaced Persons subcommittee this past year. And in addition to other committee activities we've done, we spent a good deal of time this past year gathering information about how libraries around the country were participating in Welcoming America Week. So it was wonderful to get to experience Welcoming Week firsthand in my local community.
Hi, I'm Susie O'Connor, Government Documents and Instruction Librarian at University of South Carolina, Aiken. I became involved with Welcoming Augusta Planning Group because I'd recently moved from Oregon, and as someone new to the Savannah River area, I was looking for opportunities to build connections in the community and meet groups that share my interest. As a government documents librarian, I was specifically interested in projects that connect to social justice and civic engagement. And as a new faculty member, I was also searching for scholarship and service opportunities, which are part of universities' expectations for all faculty. Natalia, who's worked on campus for 13 years and is well established, invited me onto the Welcoming Augusta Committee. I joined the committee because I thought it would be a great experience and allow me to use my knowledge as a government documents librarian.
Welcoming America is a national nonpartisan and nonprofit organization that originated in 2009. They engage in a variety of activities to help communities become more inclusive of immigrants and all residents. You can see all the range of their activities at their website, welcomingamerica.org. Any organization, whether formal or informal, can network with them to help build more welcoming communities. One of their most well-known annual activities is promoting Welcoming Week as a specific focus for communities during the week in September. For 2020, the week was September 12th through 20th. This year, the theme was Creating Home Together. On the national website for Welcoming Week, you can look up what events are happening or have happened in your area. And as an organization or community engaging in Welcoming Week, you can advertise your own events there as well. 2020 was the second year Welcoming Week Augusta hosted Welcoming Week activities. The group grew out of a variety of individuals' separate interests in providing a more welcoming community in Augusta. Some of those individuals went on to form an additional organization focused on immigrant rights. But while there is some overlap between the two groups, they are distinct, although informal, entities.
In contrast, WOW, also known as Week of Welcome, is celebrated on many college campuses, including USC Aiken. During this time, the university welcomes back students in the fall with fun activities and events to kick off the year. Often, several campus partners are involved in putting together the events, such as Student Life, clubs, international programs, Greek Life, the library, and other campus groups. There is often a concerted effort to welcome diverse groups, including traditional students, commuters, LGBTQ students, veterans, international students, and students that participate in Greek life. Natalia and I thought it would be fun to combine both events and bring Welcoming Week to students during Week of Welcome. We teamed up with the international international programs on campus and student life to create welcoming week-based programming on campus. The turnaround time for getting everything together was very quick because of all of the COVID efforts on campus. For this year's Welcoming Week programming on campus, we had the Civics Jeopardy game, which was a community event, but we worked with campus to get intercurricular enrichment requirement credits for students who attended the event to encourage participation. We also put up a map for sharing global experiences in front of student life. The travel map encouraged participants to mark where you've traveled, where you'd like to travel, and where you've lived abroad. International programs set up a student panel discussing home cultures and experiences coming to the U.S. Student Life hung flags in the Student Activity Center honoring Latinx Heritage Month. Welcome signs in multiple languages and ALA welcome posters in multiple languages were hung in the Student Activity Center and in the library. Next year, we're hoping that we will not still be dealing with COVID and that we will be able to increase our Week of Welcoming Week offerings.
As mentioned earlier, the Welcoming Week Augusta Planning Group grew out of a variety of individuals' separate interests in providing a more welcoming community in Augusta and the larger Central Savannah River area. In 2019, the founder of the group, a local community member working in the nonprofit human services area, put out a call on social media to gauge interest. Primary collaborators that year came from the Augusta Islamic Center and a downtown neighborhood Christian church that engages in a great deal of community outreach. And the pictures here represent some of those involved with the events last year. Our current planning group includes the board member of a local nonprofit children's museum, an outreach librarian from the downtown public library, a local educator at a private religious school, a local computer security specialist, one longtime community organizer, and Susie and I, two academic librarians. This year, our primary collaborators for events were the local nonprofit Children's Museum Imagination Station and the local independent bookstore in downtown Augusta, the Book Tavern. The planning group grew and worked in a very organic and flexible way. After getting to know each other and brainstorming ideas for Welcoming Week, we basically each agreed to take on a particular activity, like bilingual story time or the author's talk. In some cases, we formed a subcommittee of people focused on planning a particular event. In other cases, one individual was all that was necessary to implement an idea. Susie will talk more about the planning timeline.
Last year was the first Welcoming Augusta event. The first Welcoming Augusta event planning committee had in-person meetings, and the Welcoming Week events were in person. The whole event came together very quickly in about 6 weeks, with the final schedule coming out just 2 weeks before the event started. In contrast, planning for the 2020 Welcome Week started in January. The event's founder was moving, and she wanted to ensure that the newly established Welcoming Week would continue as a tradition in Augusta. Natalia had joined the group right after the first Welcoming Week, and she took over chairing the Welcoming Week committee in spring. This year was complicated as far as planning because we didn't know what was going to happen as far as COVID, and we discussed several different options: scheduling all in-person events, having only virtual events, or creating a hybrid schedule of virtual and in-person events. In July, we made the tough call to cancel our pickleball and frisbee golf events and move our book and author event online. Initially, we'd also planned our Kickoff Event to be a live event at Imagination Station with diverse food truck options. This also was moved to an online event. The primary reason for this, rather than doing the in-person events with physical distancing, was that there was a concern of the risks involved with the live events. Secondly, the group had observed that there was a lack of following safe social distancing practices at local events. We did keep our voter registration as in person. Voter registration is very important this year as it's a presidential election year, and we felt that it would be easier to maintain social distancing because of the walk-by, stop-by nature of the event. We've got our final schedule out August 31st. This was about 2 weeks before the start of the event. After the event, we will be following up with a debriefing to go over how the week's events went. Because we waited on making choices about in-person events, we didn't get the finalized schedule for welcoming Augusta out until 2 weeks before the event. All of our events we've posted on the National Welcoming Week website. So a little bit about our kickoff event. To encourage community participation and make sure that the events were sort of community driven, we requested that local community members submit videos, and we received a very broad selection of submissions to start our kickoff event, which was sponsored by Imagination Station. We had a children's story time about diversity with Bill and Nancy Karp. We also had how to make Ghanaian banana dessert, and we had an Italian family tell us about their favorite sport, soccer. We learned how to make chickpea hummus from Maha, who's from Egypt. We learned to make Vietnamese spring rolls. We enjoyed a praise song in the Yoruba language. We learned how to make Romanian plum dumplings, dance the funga, make Burmese kale salad, and learn how to make Mexican paper flowers. This was great too because participants could share with their families and friends and generate excitement for the event. Another way that we tried to gain community participation was through soliciting videos on immigrant stories. We asked when immigrants first felt welcome in Augusta and if they would share their immigration story with us. This gained a little bit less traction, and it may have been just because this particular Welcome Week project got off the ground so close to Welcoming Week. We didn't really have as much time to promote it, but we did get 2 submissions, and we're hoping to collect more throughout the year for next year. So here are just some photos from our event. We've got the Carps with singing and story time for Welcome Week. We've got Maha making hummus. We have learning how to make paper flowers, our Italian soccer family, and then we had some other families who submitted recipes. Here, this is actually from the book and author event. We have Margie Marge, author of The Shimmigrant. COVID changed the logistics around advertising for the event. We knew less people would be walking around to see event posters in community spaces. We also knew that we could not expect that news would carry easily by word of mouth. In 2019, the Welcome Augusta Planning Committee started a Facebook page. This year, we tried to increase our online presence by adding a website, Twitter account, and Instagram. To advertise for our events, we created flyers, posted videos, and video image stills to build interest in our events. Here is our schedule of Welcoming Augusta events for 2020. We are recording this presentation in the middle of Welcome Week, So far, we've had our kickoff on Saturday, which was sponsored by the Children's Museum Imagination Station. We also included national events put on by Welcoming America in our schedule in case locals were interested. On Sunday, we had our interview and Q&A with Margie Marge, author of The Shimmigrant. This week we still have our Spanish-English story time, our Jeopardy civics game, which is a community event but has approval for intercurricular enrichment requirement credits to encourage students from USCA to join as well. We also have our voter registration event, which is our only in-person event that is going to take place outdoors in front of the Book Tavern downtown and on the Augusta Riverwalk. This is just an example of our events, but communities all across the U.S. put on all different types of events. Some other common types of programming that we didn't include beautification projects in the community, such as city cleanups and community art projects such as murals. Many communities also do programming with diverse businesses within their communities. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas that maybe you can take home to your community. One of the more complicated or most complicated events for us to plan for our welcoming week was our book club event with Margie Marge. We spent a couple of summer months with several members of our planning group reading novels to pick out what would be the most appropriate book to fit with the theme of Welcoming Week. There was lots of logistics with contacting the author, setting up the interview and online session, as well as streaming the video on YouTube and Facebook. Thankfully, all this work paid off. The event was fairly well attended, and the committee and attendees alike both had fun. There is a little bit more work with live streaming events. We'll also be having the Jeopardy civics game on Thursday as a live event. For the live events, we've been doing practices. I wanted to take a moment to recognize the community partners we worked with. Right here we have the Imagination Station Children's Museum. They helped organize the kickoff event, including soliciting videos and editing the final kickoff video. The Book Tavern was initially going to be the location for our book and author event before we moved it online, but they continued to be very heavily involved with the event. They ordered copies of The Shimmigrant for us that were signed and allowed our participants to do pre-orders on the books. They also allowed us to use their location as a voter registration location. We also worked closely with the League of Women Voters. Initially, the League of Women Voters were going to do most of their advocacy online this year, but when we said that we were interested in doing an in-person event, they did training for multiple members in our group on how to do a voter registration, and then they also decided to sponsor the event and post the event, help with sign-ups, and basically be the point people for the event, which was really wonderful and took some pressure off of us. And of course, we worked with the international programs and student life at UC Aiken. They were great to work with and helped us come up with some programming really quickly on campus to try to bring a little bit of this event onto campus.
To sort of connect our activities with the larger efforts across the country, as I mentioned earlier, over the past year, I've been serving on the American Libraries Association Services to Refugees, Immigrants, and Displaced Persons Subcommittee, or SRIDP for short. That is part of the Office for Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services, or ODLIS, Advisory Committee. And SRIDP grew out of a 2016 ALA effort called the New Americans Library Project, which sought to explore how public libraries can support the roughly 13% of our population that have some form of immigrant status. This group created a resource guide called the Toolkit for New Americans, which was published in 2019. In collaboration and work with Project Welcome, which is a project connecting libraries serving refugees and asylum seekers, developed by the Mortensen Center for International Library Programs at the University of Illinois. A working group for library issues related to refugees and immigrants got started in 2017, and this group eventually became the SRIDP committee in 2018. The charge of the SRIDP committee is to support and promote ALA libraries and communities to ensure that libraries provide the best possible services supporting refugees, immigrants, and displaced persons. The committee currently consists of 10 members from diverse backgrounds, geographic regions, and library settings. Each member serves a 2-year term. Several of the committee's members were familiar with Welcoming Week, and so we decided to put together a manual with ideas and best practices for libraries of all sorts that were considering hosting such a week. We finalized the manual this summer right before Welcoming Week, and we hope that it can be of use for libraries and individuals going forward. You can access the guide on the website here, and additional resources can also be found at the Mortensen Center's Project Welcome website. There is lots of great stuff here, so definitely check that out. You can also access the original toolkit for New Americans on the link on the slide. And the SRIDP subcommittee is planning to do a workshop at ALA next year and probably provide a webinar or several webinars during the coming year. So if you're interested in those, keep your eyes open, or you can email me and I'll keep you on our list to alert you when they're happening. Until then, on the ALA resource page entitled Libraries Respond to Immigrants, Refugees, and Asylum Seekers, there's just a wealth of great resources there and links to further information and toolkits and whatnot.
All right, so looking forward, one of the things that we definitely learned this year is the sooner you can get a finalized schedule and start advertising the events, the better. So, one of our goals is to finalize our schedule at least a month before the event to allow for promotion. We're also hoping to do a little bit more. We got a start. Our partners on the USCA campus in student life and international programs, but we're hoping to do even more for next year and to start a little bit earlier. Next year, we're also really hoping that COVID will not prevent us from doing in-person events, as it's easier to create a sense of belonging and welcome in person. And I know that there was a little bit of sadness within the group when we weren't able to do some of the fun events that we planned, such as the Frisbee golf and racquetball. The book and author event went very well. It was the committee had a lot of fun with it and the attendees. So we're definitely intending to do that again next year. One of our goals is to pick the book at the beginning of the summer to give the participants the whole summer to finish reading the book before the event. We're also going to, throughout the year, continue soliciting for immigrant stories that we can then kind of play throughout Welcoming Week next year. There's also a lot of interest in our group on putting on a civic dinner, and several of us are watching civic dinners during Welcome Week this week that are being put on by other groups to help with our future planning. We also want to do a little bit more with businesses. Because of COVID, we missed out with doing some of the things that we planned. So we're hoping to work with businesses, especially local immigrant-run restaurants. And as a government documents librarian, I'm going to continue to look for opportunities for civic engagement. And if this week's Jeopardy game goes well, I may look at incorporating more civics games into Welcoming Week next year.
Yes, and we definitely have gained a lot of insight from our experiences the last 2 years. So we're hoping to also seek involvement from the mayor and city council, at a minimum having them make a statement or be present for the kickoff. If not, involve them in a more meaningful way and maybe a panel presentation. There's other opportunities we are hoping to explore. For example, collaborating with the YMCA in the Central Savannah River area, since they are a partner with Welcoming Week at the national level. And also there's great opportunity for more collaboration with Augusta University, as well as outreach to churches, fellowships, temples, and mosques in the area. And all of that would help expand the participation and the community building in the planning and the involvement for next year. So we'd really love to hear from you now. And in addition to questions that you have for us, we'd love to hear what you're currently doing for outreach and community building, and how would you like to become a more welcoming community, and specifically more inclusive to newcomers. So let us hear your thoughts now.